For over 40 years, the most valuable diamond in the Dutch royal collection was locked away in the absolute darkness of a vault. The previous queen simply could not physically bear the agonizing pain of wearing it. But when a new queen took the throne, she unlocked the safe, placed the crushing weight on her head, and sent a silent message to the world: "I can carry this burden." Behind every flawless royal portrait lies a brutal physical reality: blinding migraines, bleeding skin, and even cheap haberdashery elastic. Today, we step behind the velvet ropes to uncover the silent physical toll of Europe's heaviest heirlooms. Because if you cannot endure the pain of the crown, you cannot hold the power. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. I have a little confession to make before we begin today. A simple evening out in high heels usually becomes a trial for me after just a few minutes, and I quickly find myself scanning the room for the nearest chair. Because of this, I watch royal women with quiet admiration and perhaps a touch of envy when they attend state banquets wearing massive historic jewels. Do you ever catch yourself wondering how they manage it? They carry these pieces with absolute grace, never letting on that they are balancing rigid, heavy metal frames on their heads for hours on end. It is so easy to look at the elegant portraits and see only the diamonds and the perfect posture. The physical reality of wearing these pieces is rarely visible to the public. A common assumption is that only the giant monumental tiaras cause discomfort, and that the smaller, more refined pieces must be perfectly easy to manage. The wedding day of Diana, Princess of Wales, provides a fascinating reality check. The Spencer family tiara appears incredibly delicate in photographs. It lacks the towering height or dense metalwork of older, imposing pieces from the royal vaults. Yet, her brother Charles Spencer later recalled that his sister was left with a cracking headache by the end of the wedding morning. The issue was not necessarily the sheer mass of the jewel, but simply the fact that she was not used to wearing a tiara for such an extended period. Wearing these historic pieces is an acquired physical skill that requires practice and endurance. The beautiful, joyful images from that day completely mask the physical toll, as she appeared entirely relaxed to the world despite the pain. It was her first real lesson in the unwritten rule of royal life. The higher your status, the more physical suffering you are expected to endure with a perfect smile. This brings us to another iconic piece she wore frequently throughout her royal life: Queen Mary's Lover's Knot tiara. Made by Gerard in 1913 as a copy of the older Cambridge version, it strikes a lovely visual balance. I always find it to be an ideal choice for the wife of a future monarch, as it is substantial without being overly dominant. The design features 19 suspended pearls hanging within diamond arches. Yet, even a beautifully proportioned piece can cause physical discomfort. For years, a specific version of events has circulated in the press regarding this tiara. According to these accounts, those 19 pearls would swing and strike the metal frame as she moved, creating a constant sound that contributed to her headaches. Whether it was the motion, the sound, or the weight of the piece, wearing it comfortably required some practical ingenuity behind the scenes. Her hairdresser, Richard Dalton, came up with a highly effective, completely unglamorous solution, and he actually discovered it by accident while trying to hide a minor beauty mishap. During a royal tour in 1985, Diana had a sunburn on the back of her neck. To draw attention away from it, Dalton suggested she wear Queen Mary's emerald choker as a headband. To secure the heavy necklace across her forehead, he sourced ordinary knicker elastic, the quarter-inch elastic typically used in underwear. After watching her struggle with cumbersome tiaras and hold her head in pain after long events, Dalton realized the same humble knicker elastic could solve the problem with her traditional headpieces. Jewelers typically secure tiaras using stiff bands or velvet cords, which are designed to lock a heavy frame rigidly in place. Dalton simply swapped that unforgiving standard hardware for the soft, highly stretchable underwear elastic. It acted as a perfect shock absorber, securing the metal frame while gently cushioning the weight. The next time he fitted a tiara on her head with this specific haberdashery hack, she told him it was perfect, and she never complained about the pain again. I love the sharp contrast in this little detail. A priceless masterpiece of royal history, crafted by the elite artisans at Gerard, was ultimately made comfortable by a few inches of cheap elastic. Dalton even recently joked that whenever he sees Catherine, Princess of Wales, wearing a tiara today, he wonders if she has a piece of knicker elastic hidden in the back. If we step away from the polished state portraits and look closely at the mechanical reality of these jewels, the illusion of weightlessness gives way to pure, practical engineering. Auction houses like Christie's regularly document the specific hardware required to keep these heavy pieces from sliding. When you examine an antique tiara off the head, you will find small, deliberate loops built into the base of the frame. These exist specifically to thread hairpins, ribbons, or elastic tape. The hairstyle serves as the crucial load-bearing foundation. In the past, when women wore particularly tall, heavy models, they relied on large hairpieces to support the metalwork. Today, a chignon, or a gathered half-up style, performs that exact function, distributing the mass of the jewelry safely across the head. The relationship between the hair and the jewels is so close that Christie's even notes how a skilled jeweler can fashion a completely hidden wire frame, allowing a heavy necklace or bracelet to sit upright within a chignon as if it were a natural tiara. This level of integration requires careful calculation, even down to the chemistry of the hair products. A cosmetic chemist who worked with Diana, Princess of Wales, once shared that they formulated a specific, softer hairspray for her. The goal was to provide enough grip to hold the rigid metal frame in place without leaving a dulling residue on the priceless diamonds. We saw a clear example of this architectural approach during the wedding of Catherine, Princess of Wales. Her stylist, James Price, revealed the exact sequence of his work for that morning. He anchored the tiara and the veil first, actively sewing the heavy pieces firmly into position. Only after this hardware was locked down did he build the final demi-chignon around it. The hairstyle was created specifically to balance the piece and completely obscure the intricate theatrical rigging required to hold it steady. Securing a traditional continuous frame requires considerable skill, yet dealing with a tiara that lacks a closed circle presents a completely different geometric challenge. The Oriental circlet is a prime example of this specific problem. It was actually designed by Prince Albert in 1853, drawing inspiration from the Mughal arches and lotus flowers he admired at the Great Exhibition. It originally featured a continuous base. However, during a mandatory remodeling in 1858 to surrender certain family diamonds to the Hanoverian branch, Gerard altered the frame. They left a small gap at the back, turning it into an open circlet. This missing section removes the natural stability of a full crown, meaning the piece requires significant reinforcement to sit securely on the head. We saw an ingenious solution to this issue when Catherine, Princess of Wales, debuted the Oriental circlet at a state banquet for the German president in December 2025. Photographs taken from behind her chair revealed a highly effective styling technique. Her own hair was tightly wrapped around the rear sections of the tiara. Instead of relying solely on hidden wires or an elastic band, her hair functioned as a living fastener, gripping the open ends of the circlet to keep the substantial diamond and ruby arches firmly anchored. Some designs are constructed as solid, unyielding walls of gems. The Cartier India tiara illustrates this dense approach perfectly. Henri Lavabe crafted the piece at Cartier in 1923 for Beatrice Forbes, the Countess of Granard, before Princess Marie-Louise acquired it in 1937. The structure mimics traditional Indian architectural motifs, rendering it as a tightly packed band of diamonds, sapphires, and pearls. The visual scale is undeniably grand. Yet, looking at that continuous, unbroken wall of heavy stones set in metal, you can almost feel the physical burden it places on the neck. It entirely lacks the airy lightness found in tiaras with spaced elements or open scrollwork. Despite the sheer density of this Cartier tiara, Princess Marie-Louise managed it with remarkable physical stamina. As a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, she was well accustomed to the grueling demands of royal protocol. She purchased the tiara in time for the 1937 coronation and wore it again for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. These ceremonies lasted for hours, demanding incredible endurance from the older attendees sitting in heavy velvet robes and massive jewels. Princess Marie-Louise found a highly practical, slightly unorthodox way to cope with the long day. She attended the service wearing the heavy Cartier piece along with a traditional velvet coronet, and she used that coronet to hide a supply of sandwiches and a small flask. The image of a senior royal navigating the most solemn state occasion with a packed lunch tucked into her headgear adds a wonderful layer of practical reality to the day's strict formality. She also continued to wear the piece for regular engagements, including a Swedish state visit in 1954 and a famous series of portraits taken by Cecil Beaton. Following her death in 1956, she left the Cartier India tiara to her godson, Prince Richard of Gloucester. Because he was only 12 years old at the time, the jewel went into the care of his mother, Princess Alice, Duchess of Gloucester. Her reaction to receiving this substantial Cartier creation was distinctly unenthusiastic. She openly compared its towering, dense shape to a bishop's mitre, suggesting she found the piece not just cumbersome, but aesthetically overwhelming. She simply placed the masterpiece back in the vault to wait for her future daughter-in-law, perfectly content to wear her more refined, elegant pieces instead. It's a refreshing moment of royal honesty. Sometimes, an imposing Cartier masterpiece simply doesn't suit your personal style, and there is no reason to let a piece of jewelry wear you. The tiara eventually passed to a woman who was entirely willing to take on the physical challenge. When Prince Richard married, his wife Brigitte, the current Duchess of Gloucester, gained access to the family's extensive jewelry collection. She clearly does not mind the imposing scale of the piece as her mother-in-law did. She has worn the Cartier India tiara regularly over the decades for state openings of Parliament, Guildhall banquets, and foreign visits. She chose it for the Dutch state banquet in 1982, and she continues to wear it to this day, appearing in the dense, sapphire-studded piece at the state banquet for the German president in December 2025. She simply accepts the physical weight as part of the occasion, ensuring the monolithic tiara remains a visible part of the family's working collection. If we move our attention from the British vaults over to the Swedish royal collection, we find a piece that truly defines the concept of a monumental jewel. The Braganza tiara is an imposing structure of diamond flowers and leaves. Just looking at its grand, sweeping proportions, you get the distinct impression that a single, slightly too hasty tilt of the head could cause the entire arrangement to slip. It is a piece of absolute status. The Swedish royal family has a generous tradition of sharing their grand heirlooms among the princesses, allowing pieces like the Napoleonic amethyst parure to circulate freely. But the Braganza tiara operates under a ruthless set of rules. It is the ultimate monopoly of power, reserved exclusively for the reigning queen. Wearing it sends a clear, silent message to everyone in the room: there is only one sovereign here. And to project that absolute authority, Queen Sylvia must endure hours of physical discomfort. The story behind this tiara involves a fascinating journey across continents. Emperor Pedro I of Brazil commissioned the piece around 1829 for his second wife, Princess Amalie of Leuchtenberg. He used diamonds purchased from his children that originally belonged to his first wife, Empress Maria Leopoldina. Amalie was clearly taken with the gift. She wrote to her mother that the Brazilian diamonds were of such pure clarity, they seemed to be made of water. Her time on the throne was brief, and her life proved turbulent. During a period of political upheaval, she pawned the tiara along with her emeralds in London to secure collateral for a loan to finance a war for the Portuguese throne. She successfully retrieved the jewels before her husband's death and kept her diamonds through decades of exile. When Amalie died in 1873, having outlived her only daughter, the tiara was left to her sister, Queen Josephina of Sweden. The massive piece was shipped across the sea from Lisbon to Kristiansand and then to Stockholm, entering the Swedish vaults. For many years, people mistakenly referred to it as the Swedish coronation tiara, assuming Queen Sofia wore it for her coronation in May 1873. The timeline shows the jewel actually arrived in Sweden after that ceremony took place. Since 1976, Queen Sylvia has worn the Braganza tiara for her most important appearances. Looking at the elegant state portraits, the rigid diamond framework appears completely stable. Behind the scenes, the reality of managing this heirloom is far less serene. In a documentary about the royal jewels, she spoke with surprising candor about the physical toll the piece demands. She acknowledged its beauty while stating plainly that it is heavy and difficult to wear. The true challenge lies in its construction. The tiara does not simply sit heavily on the head, it actually moves. Securing a shifting, top-heavy diamond framework requires immense patience and highly specific techniques from her hairdressers. The discomfort stems from a combination of the overall mass, the movement of the elements, the stiffness of the frame, and the long hours required at state banquets. Adding to the physical burden, the tiara is part of a parure that includes massive diamond earrings weighing 30 carats each. Given the sheer effort required to wear it, one might expect such a demanding piece to be quietly retired to a display case. Queen Sylvia continues to choose the Braganza tiara for the most significant milestones. She wore it for the wedding of her daughter, Crown Princess Victoria, in 2010, and for the King's Golden Jubilee banquet in 2023. Most recently, she selected it for a new official portrait ahead of the 2026 celebrations marking the King's 80th birthday and their golden wedding anniversary. For decades, she refused to take the tiara outside of Sweden. She made her first exception in 2007 for a state visit to Denmark, simply because she wanted to wear a piece Queen Margrethe had not seen frequently. Her dedication to this difficult jewel goes beyond standard royal obligation. Her own mother, Alice de Toledo, was born in Brazil. Queen Sylvia has spoken about the special, personal connection she feels to Empress Amélie and her Brazilian roots whenever she wears the diadem. She endures the shifting metal and the immense weight as a quiet nod to her heritage and a duty to the crown. While she manages this heavy historical burden out of deep respect for tradition, there is another woman in Europe who seems entirely in her element, wearing the most demanding jewels available. My personal observation is that Queen Maxima of the Netherlands was simply made for luxury. She does not shy away from imposing, voluminous ornaments. While other queens might choose a lighter, compromise piece for a long evening of diplomatic protocol, Maxima fully embraces the dazzling scale of the House of Orange collection. She carries these monumental pieces with a vibrant energy that makes the dense metal frames appear almost weightless. A perfect example of this fearless approach is her use of the Dutch sapphire tiara. King Willem III paid 100,000 guilders back in 1881 to have Maison van der Stichel create this piece for his wife, Queen Emma. It is a towering structure holding 655 diamonds and 33 Sri Lankan sapphires, with the grand central stone alone weighing around 44 carats. Over the years, the frame received necessary structural updates, first in 1928 by Van Kempen to consolidate the base, and again in 2013 by Steltman to help it sit slightly higher on the head. When Queen Maxima wears the full, unedited version of this piece, as she did during a state visit to Denmark in 2015, paired with her inauguration gown, it completely transforms her silhouette. The soaring design closely resembles the tall spires of a Gothic cathedral. If you look closely at the intricate construction, you will notice a highly specific mechanical detail. Some of the diamonds are mounted on thin wires to create an en tremblant effect. This means the stones physically tremble and catch the light with her slightest movement. It is a brilliant technical feat from the jewelers, but it inherently adds to the delicate balancing act required to keep such a heavy, vibrating structure steady throughout a multi-course banquet. It takes a certain kind of physical confidence to manage a piece that actively shifts as you walk. The Dutch royal vaults contain an even more notorious heavyweight, the Steuart tiara. The focal point of this 1897 creation by Edward Sherman is a rare, sea blue-greenish diamond weighing nearly 40 carats. King William III originally purchased this rough stone in 1690 for Queen Mary II. The tiara built to showcase it is massive, featuring 6 principal sections graduated toward that central motif. Queen Juliana loved the piece, But her daughter, Queen Beatrix, reigned for 33 years and never wore the Steuart tiara in public a single time. Its sheer scale and crushing weight triggered severe headaches. For over 4 decades, the most important jewel in the Dutch collection was locked away in the vault, leading an entire generation to wonder if this masterpiece would ever be seen again. But the arrival of Queen Maxima marked a distinct shift in eras. She is a queen who naturally commands grand, voluminous jewelry. In 2018, she quietly returned the full-sized Steuart tiara to the world stage at Buckingham Palace. She seamlessly embraced the family's grandest legacy, carrying the immense physical weight with a vibrant energy that almost makes you forget how punishing those diamonds truly are. We see this same ease when she wears the Württemberg ornate pearl tiara. Also created by Sherman in 1897, it features an intricate design of diamonds forming scrolls and fleur-de-lis. It is a versatile piece, engineered with multiple settings. Queen Beatrix strongly favored this tiara during her reign, but she almost exclusively wore it in its most stripped-down, simplest setting, without any of the top-drop pearls attached. In contrast, when the tiara is assembled with its full set of 11 upright pear-shaped pearls, it takes on the rigid, towering silhouette of a high fortress. Queen Maxima recently selected a highly elevated version of this tiara, complete with the added top pearls, for an Italian state visit to the Netherlands. She navigates these towering, heavy frameworks seamlessly, treating the grandest, most physically demanding pieces of royal history as though they require no effort at all. If we step away from the evening tiaras for a moment, we find the ultimate example of this physical burden in the most important royal object of all. From a distance, the imperial state crown can almost appear to be a tall, rigid velvet hat simply decorated with a scattering of jewels. The physical reality of holding it on your head is a completely different experience. We often talk about the heavy historical significance of the crown, yet Queen Elizabeth II dealt with its very real, crushing physical weight for over 7 decades. It is incredibly easy to look at the official photographs and see only the sparkling light. During a 2018 conversation with the BBC, royal expert Alistair Bruce shared a brilliantly simple observation. Diamonds are, fundamentally, stones, and thousands of stones are immensely heavy. The open-work gold frame of the crown holds nearly 3,000 of them. It also supports massive historical centerpieces, including the Black Prince's ruby. If you ever look closely at this enormous red stone, you will notice a small gold plug at the top, showing where it was actually drilled and worn as a simple pendant centuries ago. Carrying these ancient heavy rocks requires total physical submission to the jewelry. Queen Elizabeth II wore this specific crown, originally made by Gerard for her father, King George VI, in 1937, for the annual state opening of Parliament. In her later years, she completely stripped away the fairy tale magic surrounding the object and described it with absolute candor. She simply called the crown unwieldy. She did possess one distinct structural advantage when it came to keeping the massive piece steady. She noted that she and her father happened to share the exact same shaped head. Because of this anatomical similarity, once the crown was placed on her head, it locked firmly into position and stayed there. Even with a perfect fit, the weight dictated her every movement and forced her to develop strict physical rules for conducting state business. She offered a highly practical piece of advice for reading a speech while wearing a crown. You absolutely cannot look down at the paper. Instead, you must bring the physical pages up to your eye level. She explained the consequences with characteristic dryness, noting that if you did look down, your neck would break and the crown would fall off. I love her absolute pragmatism here. It was the ultimate metaphor for her entire 70-year reign. The physical weight of the crown literally dictates how the monarch must hold her head. While you might expect that level of neck-breaking weight to be strictly limited to official state crowns, the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg possesses a tiara that rivals them in sheer physical scale. Just looking at photographs of the Luxembourg Empire tiara is enough to make my own neck ache in sympathy. The physical dimensions of the piece are daunting. The frame stands 10.5 centimeters tall, over 4 inches, and measures 19 centimeters across. Instead of relying on open spaces or delicate suspended drops to lighten the load, the design forms a massive, continuous fortress of diamonds, filled heavily with dense geometric, anthemian, and scroll motifs. In French, the family refers to it as the Grand Diadème, while the German inventory listed as the Reiches Diadem. The English name Empire Tiara actually stems from a slight mistranslation of that German word for rich, meaning this piece is quite literally documented as the rich tiara. While romantic rumors long claimed this massive diamond wall was a Romanov dowry, records show it was actually built for the Nassau family by 1829. But today, its origins are far less important than what it represents to the women who must wear it: a grueling physical initiation. Handling an object of this size requires intense physical discipline from the wearer. Some accounts suggest the piece was originally convertible, designed to break down into smaller tiaras, brooches, and rings to lessen the burden on the head. During her tenure, Grand Duchess Josephine Charlotte had many of the family jewels reworked and firmly fixed the diadem into the solid, unyielding setting we see today. The Grand Ducal family treats this specific diadem with strict exclusivity. It is reserved solely for the reigning Grand Duchess or the consort of the reigning Grand Duke. Grand Duchess Charlotte wore it on her wedding day to Prince Felix of Bourbon-Parma in 1919, and she chose it again 45 years later for the day she formally abdicated the throne. Since then, the appearances of the Empire tiara have been extremely rare. During her tenure as the reigning consort, Grand Duchess Maria Theresa followed this exact historical precedent. She limited the heavy tiara to state visits with closely allied nations, such as Belgium and the Netherlands, or the most significant international royal milestones. She selected it for the wedding of the Crown Princess of Sweden in 2010, securing the massive piece for the long, highly formal evening. Balancing a diamond wall of this magnitude safely above the forehead requires hours of perfect posture. With a new generation now stepping into the role in Luxembourg, the ultimate question remains: will the new Grand Duchess be able to endure the crushing weight her mother-in-law carried so flawlessly? Or will this diamond fortress be locked away in the vault once again? When we admire these magnificent state portraits and the flawless posture of the women in them, it is incredibly easy to forget the sheer physical discipline required to create that perfect image. The glittering photographs completely hide the reality of tight hairpins, carefully sewn anchor threads, hidden lengths of ordinary elastic, and hours of quiet, stoic endurance. Whether they are balancing a monumental diamond wall like the Luxembourg Empire tiara, or managing the dense, unyielding weight of the Cartier India tiara, these royal women demonstrate quite clearly that wearing a tiara is a heavy burden in the most literal sense of the word. Thinking back to my own struggles with a simple pair of high heels at the start of our conversation, I realize I am more than happy to leave the towering tiaras and the stiff stilettos to the women who are obligated by their status to wear them. I will gladly continue to admire their remarkable poise and their beautiful historical jewels from the absolute comfort of my own sofa with a warm cup of tea in hand. If you enjoyed this journey behind the scenes of royal splendor and found our discussion today interesting, please support this video with a like. It truly means a lot to me. Please subscribe to the channel so we can continue examining the world's most fascinating jewels together. I would love to hear from you in the comments. If the royal vaults were open to you tonight, would you boldly choose a towering diamond fortress like the Empire tiara, accepting all the physical consequences? Or, like me, would you decide that some masterpieces are much better admired from a distance? Let me know below! Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.